A historic vote could be hitting Congress, and today we're going to break it down for you because this will have a lot to do with Crypto Week. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to the show. Let's get into it. I want, of course, reveal a little bit of what's happened up here on Congress. Kind of chaos right now. Three major bills failed to get advanced. This, of course, I think put a lot of people on their heels in terms of how this is going to play out in Crypto Week. And according to what's going on in the House right now, if you look at this, most of it was being held up because of this CBDC idea. So Marjorie Taylor Greene was one of the ones that actually started this concern. And let me play a clip for her, and then we'll bring in Ron Hammond to kind of break this all down. Take a look.
I will vote for the Genius Act when they ban central bank digital currency in the Genius Act. So
some conservatives want the stablecoin legislation to be married to the Clarity Act. How much difficulty would that create in the Senate if they're married?
Marriage is a good thing. I just did it about a year ago. But one of the things we don't want to do is have a marriage in the Senate. Have a marriage in the Senate between the Clarity Act and the Genius Act, because the person presiding over that wedding would be Elizabeth Warren. I can't imagine a worse situation in all of politics than having Elizabeth Warren be the person presiding over the Clarity Act and the Genius Act coming together.
All right, so this is a big deal. I want to bring on Ron Hammond, who's been a contributor. Ron, obviously you continue your lobbying efforts there in D.C. What does this mean right now that we actually are getting revoted, and now it has, just as of a few minutes ago, actually went through to advancing? Where does this stand right now in terms of all these bills?
Yeah, sure thing, Paul. And glad to be back on. It didn't be so short of time, but there's no shortage of drama in politics here. So for those who are not aware of kind of what's happening right now, it's Wednesday right now, and we are seeing the procedural votes. These are kind of the pre-votes to the big votes that happen later on. And these are very party line actions here, but these are, again, the pre-votes to the big things. And we've already seen some drama play out, as you mentioned, largely around the CBDC bill. That's the Tom Emmer bill. And as we've seen in the past, this bill has come in front of Congress before. Actually came in front in 2024 and came for a vote. All Republicans voted in support of that bill. 3 Democrats actually voted in support of that bill as well. But largely, it's a pretty partisan bill in the grand scheme of things, actually. And in other contexts for awareness is that we're seeing a lot of the Republicans, many of those in majority here, really feel they're being slighted in the House. For those who are not following politics as much, we had the big, beautiful bill. That was a Senate-led effort. We're seeing now rescissions, which is more of the cuts that are going to be appropriating, having likely this week. That's a Senate-led effort as well. So the House has been getting, in many sense, rolled, and the Senate has been taking the lead here. But mind you, again, the Senate does have narrow margins when it comes to having to pass certain bills. And they need that 60-vote threshold. But overall, what we're seeing is that we're seeing the Freedom Caucus, which has been a pretty, some of the terrorizers, at least when it comes to legislation, other folks call them more of the true believers here, whatever your purview is of them. They're really putting their foot down here and saying, hey, this is something that the president talked about with CBDCs and being opposed to it. It hit mainstream during the campaign, during the Joe Rogan podcast, and several other podcasts down the road that really elevated to the campaign status. And they're seeing this as a venue to maybe put their foot down. Unfortunately, that means that is really hampering crypto's ability to get legislation done. The Genius Act, that's under closed rules. Right now, that bill, if that does not get changed at all, that goes right to the president's desk, and the stablecoin bill is signed into law. If there's any change to that, it has to go back to the Senate. And then for clarity, that has not hit the Senate yet. So regardless of what happens, it's going to have to go to the Senate next. And Tim Scott, as you put out in that clip, pretty much said, don't combine the bills because it's not going to look pretty and you probably won't get anything done.
So is Marjorie Taylor Greene correct in saying there is a backdoor in this?
So bills that come out of these committees are very, very rare. But so when members of Congress see an ability to move a financial services bill, they try to load it up with their own personal priorities. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, she's not on financial services. She has not sat in these hearings that we've been seeing multiple times and multiple years over. And so this is kind of her first engagement for crypto besides the votes happened 2 years ago. And so she's seeing this as a way to more get political leverage for her own personal priorities. Okay. The narrative is more that they're building is that, hey, this is a backdoor for a CBDC because it doesn't explicitly ban CBDCs in the Genius Act. However, that's why the Anti-CBDC Act is also included in this vote series, because they're saying, well, we're going to try to mitigate your concerns here. But for many folks in the Marjorie Taylor Greene camp, they're seeing this as an ability to really push forward their conservative causes, but also to see the House have a little power over the Senate which is pretty rare sometimes for them to exercise that, and usually doesn't work out for the House. It usually is a Senate within control given their tighter margins. But they're using political power here. And so it has unfortunately just stalled the process, even just for a day or two. But the major concern, and I think for all folks' awareness who are in crypto to be aware of, is that the latest push is now to have the CBDC bill, not with the stablecoin bill, but with the Clarity Act, the market structure bill. And that bill is on pretty thin ice when it comes to odds in the Senate. We've already seen a lot of senators on the Democrat side really holding their powder dry, seeing how this develops in the House, because they understand that the Clarity Act is probably the highest priority for crypto industry as a whole. Now, if you add CBDC to it, which is more of a Trump campaign promise situation, it gives them all the more reason to walk away. And we've been seeing that reiterate very heavily through Tim Scott, French Hill, and several of the other members of Congress who've been heavily involved in this legislation for years now.
Okay, so Ron, just so I'm clear, is there a backdoor in this bill right now in terms of the Genius Act? Is there anything that would potentially have a CBDC element to it?
Nothing in there mentions central bank digital currencies, to my knowledge, and I've not seen anything of that. And that argument really has only come up this week on the Republican side. And again, mentioned this went through committee and several hearings, but to my knowledge, no. And then again, this is more narrative building and dressing up, more less substance and more politics versus policy.
When you look at other things that are happening right now, the defense mechanism that is happening there within the House, of course, we've played clips with Brad Sherman before, and this may play out in the Senate as well. I want to cut a clip for you and then Mr. Casten as well, so let's take a look.
A gentleman from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I worked hard in school, but the grade I'm proudest of is getting the first F ever issued by the crypto industry. This bill will say that the dollar must use George Washington technology while China can have a digital yuan and the crypto bros can have digital hidden money. This is Crypto Week. It's also Tax Evaders Month, National Drug Dealers Day, and Human Traffickers Tuesday.
All right, so that's the typical Brad Sherman grandstanding. Sean Casten kind of goes against him here. Let me play this clip for you, and then I'll get your opinion.
And you can ignore anyone who says this is a tool for legitimate finance because the tool is overwhelmingly used for crime. All 100% of ransomware attacks in the United States get paid in crypto. The Genius Act is for so-called stablecoins. I say so-called because they are neither stable nor are they coins. They are bits of computer code. 6% of them are used to buy things. Nearly 90% are used to provide a liquidity bridge between much shadier cryptocurrencies, the ones contemplated by the Clarity Act. No one will sell you a gallon of milk for a Trump coin. So criminals need stable coins so they can make crypto crime pay, or shall we say, laundered blockchain. And finally, it would allow anyone to create a self-hosted wallet, basically like an online account, where you can transfer assets between anonymous users with absolutely no regulatory supervision.
Imagine that freedom. Imagine that freedom on what we're going to see around this. And of course, that is two of the biggest proponents against stablecoins. Do you think that Congress in general are, shall I say, just that dumb?
Well, this is a fairly complicated issue. I mean, I remember I had to do healthcare policy as well as crypto policy back in 2017, and that's healthcare is a whole other animal itself. But as we're realizing now, and for those who've been following crypto policy for a while, they'll probably recognize Brad Sherman and Sean Casten. But for the large majority of Americans, as well as the large majority of Congress, they have not dealt with these issues. They've not had 5 years worth of hearings on this matter. And so this is where we're kind of in the dressing phase of in the narrative building of what each camp is going forward. And so that's where we see the Sean Castens and the Brad Shermans on the more opposite end. But we've also seen some weird, strange bedfellows with the anti-Genius and anti-Clarity camp. Like the AFL-CIO came out today against both bills, and they said they're going to score it, which I'm not sure why a labor group is getting involved in finance policy. It was weird to a lot of reporters too. But we're starting to see the coalition of more the anti-crypto crowd coming up for air here, because for the longest time they hid behind Gary Gensler and the Biden administration. So that's the narrative building right now, and the wars are same. But I would pay attention to the camps that come out for either side too. So especially for Genius and Clarity from the industry, for the crypto industry, as well as where the banks are, where the fintechs are. But also look at, you got to see some consumer groups coming out of the woodwork saying this provides no consumer protection or not enough consumer protection, which is kind of ironic because there is technically none to begin with by that argument now. And so this actually puts some regulations and consumer protections in place.
Exactly.
And so
Yeah, I think though Elizabeth Warren, her kind of playbook around that is these labor groups, and that maybe that's part of it, that's starting to play into this. So very interesting things. As far as timing here, Ron, you've got the Clarity Act being voted on first, and then tomorrow we get the Genius. Is there an issue where if the Clarity Act doesn't go through, could it drag through some Democrats and maybe even some Republicans into voting no on the Genius Act in the full vote?
100%. And all this is happening right now. So my phone's been blowing up all day with folks on the Hill and right next to the Hill trying to get the latest of what's happening. They're doing lunches right now for Democrats and Republicans from those members who either pro or against camps, educating their colleagues, saying, "Hey, this is not a CBDC backdoor," or "Hey, this is an AML or anti-money laundering fiasco." Whatever narrative you want to have, but that's happening right now. Those educational conversations are happening at the basement of the Capitol. I've been to several of those in my tenure on various issues, but it's weird to think it's now crypto. And so the question is, and I think is we're watching as lobbyists and more on the government policy side, is where do the Democrats line up here, and then what is the final product? Are they going to go through the Rules Committee, which at this time on Wednesday it seems like a possibility they could combine the CBDC bill with Clarity, which just gives another reason for Democrats to potentially walk away, and that could really hurt the vote count. But even then, the Trump narrative was also hurting that vote count as well. So, but as you and I both know, this is mostly about politics. This is really not about the substance of the bill. That was handled months ago, and now it's more about how you dress it up for the American people. And we'll see who wins here, but I would say for those who are on the anti-camp, put the PAC money aside, it was pretty resounding that the American people definitely disagree with the last administration and their approach, and I would be careful going back into that viewpoint again.
100%, I agree with you. So right now, Ron, where would you put this on passing? Genius Act, let's go with your percentage right now on the Genius Act.
It changes a lot at these moments, but I'm going to say still 95%. I think it's 4% less than I had on the other week, so 95. Again, there's still that possibility that something gets snuck in there or they try to change it. And again, that's the key part. If they change any part of it, it goes back to the Senate and the odds start to dramatically decrease. But right now, fingers crossed, it seems like at least Genius is going to remain unchanged and go forward. And again, that had 18 Democrat support in the Senate, so I expect a decent amount. Clarity is going to be the tough one. That's the odds are very fluctuating. If it doesn't have the CBDC bill attached to it, things get really, really tough. Again, I mentioned there was only 3 Democrats for the anti-CBDC bill in 2024. So we could see a pretty low number. But again, if that's not on the table, maybe upwards from 30 to 60 to 70. That's the range right now.
All right. So, one more question here. And this is in reference to Elizabeth Warren. And I'm trying to outthink her in the sense of what would she do? What would she do next that could cause throw a wrench in it? So what would this anti-crypto general do? what do you think?
Look at self-custody. I think she had a bill really anti-DeFi, but also really anti-self-custody last Congress. And I think that's going to make a reappearance here, especially the conversation around privacy, central bank digital currencies, self-custody. Those are really very contentious topics, especially right now. But we could see a situation where maybe Republicans say, hey, we want more of, we'll drop the anti-CBDC language, but we want more self-custody protections. Which we've seen a lot of Democrats be opposed to. So this is the 40 chess that's playing out right now. And to Tim Scott's point, he mentioned this, where Elizabeth Warren does have a say. And many people will wonder, well, why does Elizabeth Warren have a say? She's in the minority. Well, when you start having these big bills that you need to have, you call it a four-corner sign-off. You need to have the chairs of the relevant committees kind of come to agreement. And Elizabeth Warren does sit at that table. So they include the majority and the minority. So if there's a big bill down the road to decide, hey, let's table Clarity, let's table Genius, and let's just throw into a big bill down the road, you're going to have Elizabeth Warren needing to sign off on that. And she says no. Guess what? You're not going to be moving forward likely in the Senate. So she does have some power. Even the Democrats are in the minority. They do have some power, especially in the Senate. We're seeing it really executed pretty soon.
Interesting. Okay. That leads us into another thing that's going on right now as all this happens, and that is day one of the Roman Storm trial. This, of course, was part of the tornado cash, and it really boils down to privacy, back to your point of self-custody. And this is a jury trial. So the likelihood is this is going to play out into the issue of whether or not you can hold your own tokens and do the kind of things that we're talking about here within crypto. I wanted to play a clip that's coming out of that because this gets into interesting issues around the industry and how they support it. Take a look at this.
Update from the first real day of the Tornado Cash trial. The opening by the government was pretty much what you would expect. A series of scams, a hack of $200 million, and then the Ronin hack, and described how all of these were laundered through Tornado Cash. The defense also presented their case. First of all, they emphasized that Storm had nothing to do with the scams and hacks in question. Then they actually went into quite a bit about the role that Tornado Cash played in creating privacy opportunities for users of Ethereum and why that was important, including the fact that the Ethereum blockchain is completely transparent. Now, they discussed, sort of as metaphor, what would it be like if somebody published your entire bank records on the internet? You wouldn't like that probably, right? So they made it quite relatable to the jury on an everyday basis. They also emphasized that the overwhelming majority of people using Tornado Cash were normal people, was the phrase that was used a couple times, and also that members of the Ethereum community, including Vitalik himself, in, I believe, May of 2020, where the keys were burned and they lost access to the system.
All right, so just to kind of support what he was talking about there, that reporter, this is a good example of some of the resources that were banned on Tornado Cash. GitHub, this is one of the biggest platforms out there for software development, USDC, Infura, all of this, Alchemy platform, RPC, etc. So the point being is that, yes, normal people, normal companies utilize this, and the privacy issue is the bigger one here, because it boils down to if the jury comes in and says, yeah, we should have privacy, how would the Senate not agree with what a jury is saying? Wait a minute, we believe privacy should exist. Do you think the senators are thinking about these kind of things?
In relation to everything else going on, unfortunately, it's probably not as high on the radar, but I will say this is going to be an important tonal shift. I mean, I mentioned last time how we kind of seen the old guard of the McCain era type Republicans who are really pro-national security and by any means necessary by data collection in some cases. That's starting to wither away. And we've seen the new Trump administration be really more embracing of privacy. But also, I think that's more to your point, what everyday citizens, especially after like Cambridge Analytica and all these hacks that have happened, there's been such a focus now on owning your own data, or at least having the ability to own your own assets. And we've seen some of that, especially with the Canadian truckers, we've seen that being taken away in some cases, if you disagree with the government on whatever issue it may be. So folks seeing that the government has been weaponized and utilized for assets as well as data has been a pretty total shift in the American public. I haven't seen any polling numbers, but I'm curious to see, especially the shift I'm seeing in DC, how much that correlates to a jury trial. Because in my belief, I believe that it'd be more amenable to the Tornado Cash situation. But then again, there are some pretty damning facts that would be more poll to the jury's case when it comes to especially North Korean stuff being utilized here. So again, very circumstantial. We'll see what happens, but the upside being a jury trial is that there has definitely been a total shift among the American people, and that might be reflected in this case, but it remains to be seen.
Yeah, well, I think the point you hit on earlier is the fact that we are seeing, and remember, all of this is leading into the midterms next year. So if you get a scenario where we see a pushback, the American people have already spoken about what they want done, and we saw the pushback away from what the Biden administration was able to do. So I think this is going to be a very busy fall, it looks like, for you, Ron. So we definitely want to keep you on speed dial again. Thank you so much for coming in today. We appreciate it.
And that's what I'm here for. Thanks for having me, and always happy to talk anything politics.
You bet. All right, good luck up there. All right, you guys, if you're not in the Diamond Circle, get in right now. There's more breaking here as we start to move into what could be the biggest week in crypto. If you're not in the Diamond Circle, that's our way to communicate with you. It's one of our biggest groups. It's very easy to join. It's free. And of course, catch me out there on X at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on The Paul Barron Show.